Johnny Depp Amber Heard case still isn't over. What is she saying? I'll explain it. But we have at least gotten the verdict when it comes to whether or not defamation was proven. Now, the reason why this case still isn't over is because they still have to settle the damages won for lawyers' fees. And as far as I can tell, that's happening on Johnny Depp's side because, spoiler alert, technically he won more than she did. Although this isn't a straightforward guilty, not guilty sort of thing. And I didn't hear anything about awarding her anything when it came to lawyers' fees. I want to explain to you why. I want to explain to you, really, I feel like I would need to give you guys as much of the facts as possible so you can make decisions for yourself. And I feel like you're gonna get a lot of opinions. But I'd like to share with you my observations rather than give you my opinions as best I can. And I will absolutely admit when something is an opinion or when I don't 100% know something to be true. But I've been watching this case from the very beginning because I knew I was going to want to talk about it. And I will not talk about anything that I don't know what I'm talking about. So let's get into it. First of all, welcome to another video. This will be the last video, probably, about this case because I like to stick to the spiritual stuff. I like to stick to the practical mental health and self-care stuff. But I feel like this is important because things that happen in and around us, no matter how spiritual we are important. 2.5 years ago, I was not political at all in that sense. I voted. I made sure to actually really research what I was voting on. But other than that, I didn't get into politics one way or another because I genuinely felt like it didn't affect me. Well, it affects all of us. And I think we've all come to realize this, that we cannot just sit back and let things happen around us that affect us. And this applies to many things. And I don't know why I didn't see this before when it came to politics and culture, but it's true. So when it comes to being a spiritually centered person, I feel like, yeah, there are absolutely things we can ignore. But this case in particular has ramifications, sets precedents for what people can do, especially in the wake of the Me Too movement. And I feel like the fact that it was even called the Me Too movement is very telling because we as human beings have a real instinct, and I've seen this more and more in my generation, to say, oh yeah, me too. Not because it happened to us, but because we're trying to relate to other people, and that is dangerous. And that's not me saying that there weren't absolutely people like the NXIVM women who were violated. There were absolutely women who have been violated over the years, still are being violated by men. But that said, not every woman who speaks out is being honest. And this is what this case is about, is the fact that there are women who are just as much abusers as there are men, and there are women who will lie and say that men are more abusive than they are when they're the abusers. So, again, we can't prove who did what because we don't have all the footage. We can't go back and look at everything. But what this case says is that according to this jury of 7 people who ended up getting to deliberate, they found that Amber Heard did not prove enough of her case, and Johnny Depp did prove enough of his case. All of his case, to be fair. So let's get into it because I've written some notes. I wanted to get very specific for you guys. I'm not going to, like last video, like creep over into this corner. I don't know if you guys saw the last video I did. I start out really center and then like slowly but surely I wind up like over here and like closer. And I decided rather than trying to refilm it, I would just go with it. All right. So, Johnny Depp's side had, let's see, 3 statements. They had 3 statements that this case was based on. And according to the jury, they found all 3 statements to be proven based on certain criteria. So, the first statement was Amber Heard's statement, "I spoke up against sexual violence and faced our culture's wrath. That has to change." That was the first statement that the jury had to base their findings on. And so the first question is, do you find that Mr. Depp had proven all the elements of defamation? And they said yes. And what are those elements of defamation? Well, 1, the statement was made or published by Ms. Heard. They found yes. The statement was about Mr. Depp. They found yes. The statement was false. They found yes. And let me rephrase or restate this statement. "I spoke up against sexual violence and faced our culture's wrath." The jury has decided, based on all of the evidence, that that statement is false. The statement has a defamatory implication about Mr. Depp. They found yes. The defamatory implication was designed and intended by Ms. Heard. They found yes. Due to circumstances surrounding the publication of the statement, it conveyed a defamatory implication to someone who saw it other than Mr. Depp. They found yes. Do you feel Mr. Depp has proven with clear and convincing evidence that Ms. Heard acted with actual malice? They found yes. But I want to get into this because I've also listened to a few lawyers talk about this. And malice in court isn't what we think of as malice. The one thing that they mentioned, that I believe they mentioned 2 things. I decided not to go back and watch it, to be honest, because I feel like the first one makes the point well enough. And that is that malice in a court proceeding doesn't mean, oh, they meant to be mean. The key takeaway I took from listening to lawyers talk about what malice means in court is that the person knew it was false when they published the statement, when it comes to this sort of case. So the jury decided, from all the evidence shown, that the statement, "I spoke up against sexual violence and faced our culture's wrath, that has to change," that statement by Ms. Heard was known to be false when it was published. Now, Amber Heard's side has argued that she didn't come up with the headline or the title, which this is, for the online version. The print version had a different title. So there's that, and they're saying that the Washington Post was responsible for it. But here's the thing. Therefore, in this case, they had to prove that Ms. Heard republished it with her tweet. And they feel that the jury felt with the evidence, that was proven. That by Ms. Heard taking the online version of the opinion piece that she wrote, title and all, and republished it with written words on the tweet that she republished it with, that was republishing it and republishing it to a new audience. So that's key to understand here, because we could quibble, well, she didn't write the title. Well, she tweeted it. She tweeted it out to the world, and with the statement, "Today I published this." Not verbatim, but almost verbatim. So she's taken enough credit for it, according to the jury, to prove that is true. That Mr. Depp has proven with clear and convincing evidence that Ms. Heard acted with actual malice, knowing that the statement was false when it was published. Because she hasn't proven any sort of sexual violence. She's proven domestic abuse between the both of them. But again, I'm not going to get into this part because that would be my opinion. But what I am going to say is that I understand why the jury would feel that she cannot honestly prove sexual violence, because there were things that were brought up that would have proved them had she chosen to do them that she didn't do. That's all I'll say. I will say that one of the things that stands out in my mind is medical records. But we'll leave it at that. So, there was a second statement that they found all yes for. That second statement was, then 2 years ago, I became a public figure representing domestic abuse and felt the full force of our culture's wrath for women who speak out. Again, all of those last questions that I mentioned, was this about Mr. Depp? Was it false? Was it defamatory? Has he proven that it's defamatory? Was it supposed to be reaching a new audience? All of those things, the jury found yes, 100% yes. Johnny Depp proved that that statement was false, it was defamatory, it was intended to be defamatory, and it was stated with actual malice, that they knew it was false when they said it. And the other thing that's important to note here is that this 2-year statement is important because it really makes this whole case. Without it, they might not have been able to prove that it was about him. But because they have that 2-year marker from when the article was written, which was when she got the restraining order against him after he came and said that he wanted a divorce, do with that what you will, but that really, in my opinion, was what made his case, what made it that they could prove that this article was about him at all. Because in the article it says, then 2 years ago. And what happened 2 years ago for her was that she filed the restraining order against him, alleging for the first time in public domestic abuse of any kind. So there's that. The third statement was, I had the rare vantage point of seeing in real time how institutions protect men accused of abuse. And again, the jury found that this was published by Miss Heard, that it was about Mr. Depp, even if it didn't say it was intended to be, that it was defamatory, that it was false, and that it was with malice, known to be false when it was printed. So for all three of these statements, there are 7 criteria. And of that 7 criteria for each of the 3 statements, they found yes for all of them. All of them. This is important because we have to stand up for our men just as we would stand up for our women. And from what I've seen, Johnny Depp faced just as much abuse that they can prove, honestly, more of what they've proven than even Amber Heard did. That's what the evidence shows. I'm not saying that one or the other faced more abuse. What I'm saying is from the entire case, and I've watched all of the hours of it, guys. 20 some odd days of some 8-hour, I think they are, videos. A couple of them? I don't know. At a minimum, each of the videos is like 4 hours long. I'll give you that. Some of them were not as long. I've watched them all. And from what I saw of all the evidence, because I watched a lot of them live to make sure I didn't miss anything that got cut out, because sometimes that happened if you weren't watching it live, there was more evidence on Johnny Depp's side that he was being abused. There was also some evidence that he was emotionally abusive. But as far as the physical abuse goes, it looks like he was more physically abused. Again, I'm just telling you what the evidence looked like. And yeah, there was some evidence of emotional abuse on his side. But I have to also make it clear that, yeah, she had a couple of videos of bruises, but there are absolutely injuries like bruises you can sustain from being the abuser. And she didn't show anything that would prove otherwise. So that's why we're at where we're at now, from what I can tell, from watching this whole case. So, Johnny Depp won $10 million in compensatory damages, as they're called, and $5 million in punitive damages, and he will win more for lawyers' fees later in the month. Now, Miss Heard didn't outright lose. And this is what I want to talk about and why I feel like it's important to do this video. Amber Heard didn't outright lose. Johnny Depp did win, but Amber Heard didn't outright lose. When it comes down to it, if you look at it this way, Johnny Depp had to prove 3 statements. Amber Heard had to prove 3 statements. Johnny Depp proved all of his 3 statements according to the jury. Amber Heard only proved 1 of her 3 statements according to the jury. So, what are these 3 statements? Let's go over those because we've gone over Johnny Depp's. Now, I want to make this clear. These statements were not made by Johnny Depp in image. So, when it came to Amber Heard's article that she wrote, that had her name on it. That had her face on it. The reason why we've been talking about the Waldman statements in this case, if you've heard that, is because the statements that Johnny Depp is having held against him aren't made with his name. They were made in his name by his lawyer. So his lawyer, Mr. Waldman, was the one who actually had his name on these statements. That's also important because that's an element of the case that they had to prove that they may or may not have felt she proved. Now, if they didn't prove the whole thing, then it just gets thrown out. So we don't know what the jury felt was proven or not proven of the statements that they felt weren't proven. We just know that they felt that something wasn't met. So let's get into the first statement. Amber Heard and her friends and the media used fake sexual violence allegations as both a sword and shield depending on their needs. They have selected some of her sexual violence hoax facts as the sword, inflicting them on the public and Mr. Depp. Do you find that Miss Heard has proven all the elements of defamation? The answer was no. The jury did not feel that Amber Heard, for that statement, Amber Heard and her friends in the media used fake sexual violence allegations as both a sword and shield depending on their needs. They have selected some of her sexual violence hoax facts as the sword, inflicting them on the public and Mr. Depp. They didn't feel like Amber Heard proved that that was defamatory. Now, we know what those requirements were. They were similar to Johnny Depp. They were Mr. Waldman, while acting as the agent for Mr. Depp, made or published the statement. It was about Miss Heard. The statement was seen by someone other than Miss Heard. Was it false? And did Mr. Waldman act with malice? We know that was the criteria. So apparently, for that first statement, the jury didn't find yes in all of that criteria. So she didn't win that statement. The other statement she didn't win was the third one, which was, we've reached the beginning of the end of Miss Heard's abuse hoax against Johnny Depp. They decided that, for whatever reason, didn't meet the criteria of defamation. Here's the one that she did win, or get all yeses for. Quote, quite simply, this was an ambush, a hoax. They set Mr. Depp up by calling the cops, but the first attempt did not do the trick. The officers came to the penthouses, thoroughly searched and interviewed, and left after seeing no damages to face or property. So Amber and her friends spilled a little wine and roughed up the place, got their story straight under the direction of a lawyer and publicist, and then placed a second call to 911, unquote. This statement, the jury found A, Mr. Waldman, while acting as an agent for Mr. Depp, made or published the statement. Yes, he did. We know he did. I'm guessing the other ones they found yes for that technically too. It was about Miss Heard. Yes, it was. The statement was seen by someone other than Miss Heard. It was published in the Daily Mail. Was it false? They found that this was false, and I want to get into that, but I'm going to read the last one first. Was Mr. Waldman acting with malice? Was he, when he published this, publishing it knowing it was false? They decided the evidence showed yes, just for this particular statement. Now, the reason why I want to get into this one is because, like I said, I've watched the whole trial from beginning to end because I knew I was going to want to talk about it because women's rights are important. And so I knew that even as a spiritual person, I was going to want to make some sort of commentary on that because men's rights are also important. But what is important is that men's and women's rights stand not impeding each other, but are in concert with each other. Stand to work with each other, not against each other. So, the observation that I want to make here is that the police officers, and there were several that came and testified in this case, they testified that they didn't see any signs of abuse that they could use without a witness corroboration, basically. So I kind of want to explain this to you. I've had a little bit of experience with this personally in my life, not because of anything I did or someone did to me, but we're not going to get into that. You might be able to infer it from some other things I've said in other videos, but that's all I'm going to give you. But so what happens is in a domestic abuse situation, even if the person who has been alleged to be abused doesn't cooperate with the cops, there can be enough evidence to show that abuse happened for the cops to take the case on their own without the abused party. And the first cops that showed up I think there were 3 calls, 2 sets of cops that showed up. Both sets of police officers decided from looking around the entire penthouse area that there was not enough proof of any physical violence or abuse or damage. Damage is an important word there. There was not damages shown to body or property that would signal to them that they could create a case against the alleged abuser on their own. And one of the things that was brought up in this case by, I believe it was Miss Heard's side, was the fact that there was, when the second set of police officers showed up, some evidence of wine spilled, that there was, things strewn about. But here's the thing, guys. Like the officer said, someone could do that to their own property and they can't prove it was a crime. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because I feel like had the jury, and this is my opinion, I feel like had the jury seen the police officer's testimony later in the case, when they saw some other testimony, that might have changed their verdict on even this statement that they found all yes for. The reason why I feel this is because even I, looking back on it over the last couple of weeks, the police officer statements and some of the statements that I heard from someone else just a few days ago, the stories don't match up perfectly. So I feel like that witness testimony that came just a couple of days ago before they had to decide the verdict influenced their verdict. I feel like the testimony of the police officers, had that come second to the witness testimony, that would have affected the verdict. So, we never know. And this is why things like order, the order in which something happens, matters. What I do know is that Johnny Depp won in favor of all three of his statements. What I know is that Amber Heard won one of the three statements. She was awarded $2 million. So that means that Johnny Depp in the end won $13 million and then will win some of the damages for his legal fees. We will find out. The important thing is here that Johnny Depp won his entire case, and Amber Heard did not win her entire case. She won one of three. So, 2 out of 3, she lost. People are going to look at this in all sorts of ways. People are going to look at this like, oh my gosh, Johnny Depp, I can't believe he won. He's an abuser, blah, blah, blah. This wasn't about whether or not anyone was an abuser. This case was about whether or not the evidence proves the amount of abuse alleged. You've got to keep that in mind. Because at the end of the day, this case was not about whether or not somebody got abused. It was about two people saying things about each other and whether or not they knew them to be true at the time that they were said. Or were they false? Were they known to be false? And the jury says yes. There were things that Amber Heard said, pretty much all of them were false when she said them. And when it came to what Johnny Depp's lawyer said, they felt like only one of the things he said was known to be false when it was said. Felt like I should just explain that, put that out there, because this gives you guys an opportunity now to, if you want, you can go back to Law and Crime. Law and Crime is great. They show you as much of the case as anyone would want to watch. I do know that there are a few cuts in there here and there. I don't know if those are due to technical glitches when you go and watch the replay, or if there were things that they had to leave out. I do know I got to see Johnny Depp's finger uncensored. Gross. And I used to not be sensitive to things like that, but I sure am now. And I'm in my mid-30s now. So, I don't know why that changed, but it did. Yeah. I hope everybody's having an amazing day. I hope that we don't ever have to hear about this ever again, because like I've said, there are more important things going on, like what happened to our misinformation governance board here in America. Truly. I'm not saying this case was completely unimportant, because it does have to do with domestic abuse and how it's handled in our country. And I'm just going to come out and say it. I feel like this was handled fairly based on the evidence. Because that's all we can go by, folks, is the evidence. And she had a lot of it. She had a lot of it. She had a lot of it. None of it proved her point when it came to any sort of sexual violence, and it could have. None of it proved her point when it came to him committing physical violence against her. It could have. So that's just my opinion from what I've seen. But that's what the jury had to go on. And so I feel like it needs to be said, because that seems to be what the jury's found, is that she didn't prove enough of her case. He found to have proven all of his case. So yeah. But yeah, what happened to our Disinformation Governance Board? What happened to our Ministry of Truth in America, huh? What happened to so many things? What happened to Ukraine? There's going to be a lot of propaganda out there, folks. And a true sign that a statement is propaganda, a slogan is propaganda, that's the word I was looking for, slogan, is that that slogan is going to be something that you don't disagree with. It's one of my favorite quotes. I don't even know who said it, and I feel bad about that. But the first sign that a slogan is propaganda is that it's a statement that you won't disagree with. But you can't just go based on face value. We need to be skeptical until someone is proven guilty. Leaning towards innocence, but skeptical until proven guilty. And this case in particular, the Johnny Depp Amber Heard case, wasn't an innocent or guilty in that sense, straightforward. It was did they prove these statements with their evidence kind of thing. So we know what those answers are. All right, guys, thank you for joining me. This has been a long video. Don't forget to check out the links in the description. And may the energies you serve you well. And let's keep making our way through.